Are you ready for career success? Your Career podcast will help you to take control of your career. Now, would you like to take my 2-minute career success quiz to see if you're really ready for career success? You'll get your results, analysis, and recommendations for improvement immediately. Go to janejacksoncoach.com and take the quiz today. The link is in my show notes. Now, on with the show. Welcome to episode 250 of Your Career Podcast. Now, for this very special 250th episode, I'm speaking with Andrew Seaman, the Senior Editor for Job Search and Careers at LinkedIn News. I was very fortunate to be interviewed by Andrew a few weeks ago on the Get Hired LinkedIn News podcast, and now this is a big treat for me to have him on Your Career Podcast. Andrew Seaman is the Senior Managing News Editor for Jobs and Career Development at LinkedIn News. He's the editor of the Get Hired and Get Ahead newsletters and the host of Get Hired with Andrew Seaman. Before joining LinkedIn in 2018, he was digital editor at Reuters in New York, where he previously served as the news agency's senior medical journalist. He got his start at Reuters covering the Affordable Care Act and healthcare policy in Washington, D.C. And let's welcome Andrew Seaman to the show. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Jane. Thanks so much for having me.
I've been waiting to interview you for a long, long time. And of course, you know, I've been following you on LinkedIn for ages, and it was wonderful to have that chat with you a couple of weeks ago as well. So thank you for that. But now the shoe is on the other foot. You have your own podcast, Get Hired. And now having the chance to interview you, I'm looking forward to finding out all about your career history. So how about, to kick us off, you tell us what were your early career aspirations when you were a little boy?
I wanted to be a science teacher. That was my early career ambitions. And what was actually interesting about that is I was not great when it came to grammar. I'm still not great at grammar, but I really liked science. I didn't have a particular area that I liked more than the other, but I just thought it was neat and fun. And when I was in 8th or 9th grade, part of our schooling, I went to a very small school in rural Pennsylvania, and our school was really good about career focus. And I got to job shadow one of the chemistry teachers for a day. And I realized that while I really liked science, I did not like having to corral teenagers or children. Mm-hmm. So I very quickly changed my aspirations. So when I was in about 9th or 10th grade, I would say that's when I started getting interested in journalism. And I really didn't have much ambition outside of my immediate area because I didn't feel like I was a strong writer, and I did not know how I was as a speaker. So my ultimate hope was that maybe someday I could work for one of the large regional papers in Pennsylvania. And that was sort of going even into college, my freshman year of college, that was sort of my ambition.
Okay, so with journalism, what was it that prompted or sparked that interest in journalism? Was it to do with storytelling, or was it to do with chasing the latest news? What part of it was exciting for you?
I think it was chasing the news. It was really fun to be able to be the person to tell other people about what's happening. And, you know, I really like telling people about what's going on. And also I think there is an altruistic component to journalism because you tell people information, and if it's good information, they can act on it and they can take power in their own lives with it. So I really enjoyed the idea of passing along information to people. And, it was just fun too, because one day is never like the other. So that's another thing that I really like about it.
Yeah, so the variety and probably the excitement as well. And, so I was looking through your profile and your career history, and you started with an internship at the Washington Post. That must have been so exciting. I mean, Washington Post?
It was the Washington Times. It's a caveat. So basically, it's funny. When I was a freshman in college, I wasn't sure really what my future held, because again, I didn't feel like I was a strong writer, and I thought, okay, I'll be a print journalist, but if I'm not a strong writer, I can't do much. So I applied for a summer program in Washington, D.C., and because I was a freshman, what was appealing about it was that you could take summer classes, but then they also placed you in an internship. So when I got there, what I didn't realize is that the parent program of the summer program was very conservative. And all of the internships were very right-wing in the United States. So I was placed with a very conservative radio show. And I thought, I can't be associated with this radio show. So I told them, I said, listen, I'm a freshman. You have to get me another internship. So they said, okay, well, you could go to the Washington Times. Now, the Washington Times, I think I don't know if it's still owned by them, but this is like a weird tangent, but it was owned by Sung Young Moon, who was the founder of the Moonies, they're called, and they believed in mass weddings or whatever. So I kind of kept my head down a little bit that summer, and I just did sort of boring stories about NASA and things like that. And it was fun. I made some good friends who were also interns there. But that was my first internship. So it was a very interesting internship. But the clips I got from there also paved the way for me to get my next internship. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. Internships are so valuable when you're young and you don't have a lot of experience, within the working environment, because you get to know the different people, the personalities, the politics a little bit, as well as your job function. And I think that everyone should take time to spend as much time as they can to learn all they can during an internship, because those relationships that you develop could also mean referrals into full-time paid jobs moving forward. Yes,
definitely. And I think when I graduated undergrad, if I added up all the sort of practical experiences I had, so my 3 internships that I did in Washington, D.C., my internships when I was at college with one of the local TV stations, I think I had about 9 before I graduated undergrad. And honestly, they were the most useful parts of my education, because I think traditional college, they want to teach you theory, but it's sometimes difficult for the theory to translate into practical information. So being in a newsroom, going out into the world, making mistakes, learning how to ask real people questions, I think those were invaluable experiences. And I think, like you said, you also get great connections. I still stay in touch with some of the people that were my advisors back then, and they've gone on to do great things. And it's really, I really cherish those times more than almost anything.
And you also spent time at WBRE and WYOU as a production intern too. That would have been an interesting time.
Yeah, their studios were literally a block away from my college campus. So after I finished my classes, I would go down and I would spend the evening there. And Jane Ann, who was the evening producer for the NBC station, sort of taught me how to write for broadcast. I would write stories with her. I would do the assignment desk. And then actually, because I had done that several times, I sort of was the intern that wouldn't go away. They offered me a job before I graduated, but I turned it down to go to grad school. But that's an example of, if you're doing the job and you prove yourself, it will pay off.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And now looking through your profile, USA Today was your first role as a journalist in Washington, D.C.?
Yep. That came after the Washington Times, and I applied for it on a whim. And,
on a whim?
USA. Yeah, I didn't think it would ever happen because USA Today at the time was still quite a large paper. And at the time, it was one of the papers that, if you checked into a hotel or anything in the United States, it was waiting for you in the morning. If you traveled, it was everywhere. And I just thought, I'll submit my application and see what happens. And I think I had one phone interview, and then I got a call that I got it. So I was an intern on the national desk. And what that meant was that we would report on stories that were happening throughout the United States. So we got to report on, court cases, flooding that was happening in Missouri, and then other things that popped up. And that was really fantastic. I would say that was one of the most valuable things that transformed my writing. And then I made great connections while I was there. So when I went back to Pennsylvania to continue college, I still wrote for them here and there. If something popped up or I had an idea, they would give me a few $100s and I would write a story. So I got, I think, a couple front page stories while I was in college. And then I really wanted to be a political reporter. And I had worked briefly with Susan Page, who was the Washington bureau chief of USA Today. And I was bored one day sitting in class, and we were in a computer lab. So that was back when you didn't take laptops to class. You only took a notebook. And I remember emailing her because I was in the computer lab, and I said, I know you don't take interns in the Washington bureau normally, but would you be open to me coming down and doing a semester? And she emailed back and basically said, yeah, we'll work it out. That's fine. So I coordinated it with my school, and I basically did an entire semester internship. And that served as my entire class load. Because I think I had taken pretty much all the classes I needed to. And then with the summer classes that I took early on from Georgetown, I was able to basically take a semester off and do, I think, a 12-credit internship, which wasn't normal, but I think I schmoozed every administrator and person that I needed to make it happen. So I literally was just able to focus on this entire internship for one semester. And then I finished back at school. I did one semester, and then I graduated with all my friends. But yeah, so USA Today, I was also like the intern that wouldn't go away.
That must have given you such a boost of confidence. And so often, people think, oh, I want this, but, oh, I won't get it, and I don't know how to get around it. But for you, just give it a go. Send an email, make that ask. And isn't it amazing how when you actually put yourself out there and you bravely ask, so often the answer is yes rather than a no. And it really is a matter of having the guts to go for it. Yeah. And I think that really sets people apart when it comes to making a career transition or pursuing their careers too. And so now, you became a medical journalist during your time at Thomson Reuters. So yes. You wanted to be a political journalist. You ended up doing medical journalism. Tell me about that switch and how did that eventuate?
Yes. So what had happened was when I was in graduate school for journalism, I was accepted into the investigative journalism program. And basically, you're assigned a mentor to do your thesis, who is an investigative journalist. And I was assigned someone who had won a Pulitzer Prize for health reporting, doing a story on the hospitals in Los Angeles. And at the time, he was still a health reporter and probably one of the best that there has been. And I sort of thought I would be foolish not to take advantage of his knowledge. So my thesis in graduate school was about a nursing home in upstate New York that had a lot of care issues. So basically, the United States is not known for our healthcare system. We obviously have good healthcare, but not insurance, like many other parts of the world. And that also extends to long-term care for senior citizens. And basically, through this nursing home, I told the story of why the safety net for senior citizens was broken, because this nursing home was basically was allowed to fall into disrepair. They mistreated their patients, and it's allowed to get so bad because no one wants to shut a nursing home down and move the patients, which could be a traumatic experience. So that was my master's project. And I went to a school that really prioritized practical reporting. And then I was accepted into an internship program that basically placed you at a news organization. You still had to apply to the news organization and get hired there. But I really wanted to work at Reuters because I was graduating in 2011, which was still really at the height of unemployment for the Great Recession in the United States. And so I would go there as a health reporter and cover health policy. So I held out and I turned down the other offers I got. Unfortunately, Reuters came through. And I went to DC and I was able to cover the White House and healthcare policy. And I still wanted to be a political reporter. But then when I got the opportunity to cover Congress and cover the White House, it was really boring. This was under President Obama. So it was fun to ride in the motorcade, but a lot of times you were basically stuck in the White House waiting for something to happen. And I saw that there was some leadership changes in the Washington bureau of Reuters at the time. And I knew that there was a position open in New York to cover the science of medicine. And the person who was the editor was a good connection and professional colleague of my master's advisor. So, I asked them to make an introduction, and I think at the time, we became, avid followers of each other on Twitter, and I applied and I got that job. So basically I went from the DC bureau and I applied for another job and went to New York.
My mind is just boggling. I mean, you're talking about all of this, and it's so matter of fact. But for me, it sounds so interesting and so exciting, because to be covering news in Washington, D.C. during the times of Obama, and then you say, oh, it was a little boring. To me, it just doesn't compute, because I was thinking anything to do with the White House and politics and what was going on then. And then, we're talking about medical coverage and nursing homes, and he was putting through Obamacare. It must have been, a lot going on then. I can't imagine it being quiet.
It definitely wasn't quiet, but I don't think things move as fast as people think. So I really did enjoy getting to cover the rollout of Obamacare. But when you're covering the White House, especially, as a junior reporter on weekends, a lot of it is very sleepy in Washington, D.C. on weekends. So you're sort of sitting in the back room of the press room of the White House waiting for something to happen. What I always tell people is that the overtime pay was very good, though, because they were unionized. So that was very nice. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of it is waiting around and waiting for something to happen. And if the president wanted to go play golf, you would get in the van with the motorcade and they would take you to a cafeteria on a Army or Air Force base while he played golf. So yeah, it's fun. I feel privileged and honored that I got to experience that, but it's also something that I just didn't want to spend my time doing. So yeah.
But very interesting. So you've had quite a varied experience within journalism as well. And so when you made that move to New York City, what were your thoughts? That must have felt really like a big change.
A little bit. I went to grad school here, so I had kind of lived here for a little while, even though, when you're in grad school or college, you're insulated a bit. But like I said, my grad school really prioritized practical experience. So we were told to go out and do reporting in the city. So, I knew kind of what uptown Manhattan was like, and I knew the neighborhoods. And it was just a lot of fun because a lot of my friends were still here after grad school. A lot of them had worked for other news organizations. So, it was a big change from DC, but at the same time, it was a nice coming home to see my friends again and be able to sort of slip into that routine and not have to worry about classes at the same time.
Yeah. And that was when were you still with Thomson Reuters then?
Yes. From the moment I left grad school to the time I came to LinkedIn, I had been with Thomson Reuters.
And so there you are, based in New York, doing your work. You became digital editor at Thomson Reuters. And then what facilitated this change from Thomson Reuters to LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I had spent most of my time at Reuters as a medical reporter. And I'm really happy I did that because I was notoriously bad at math when I was in school. And, I knew the basics and I knew how to sort of stumble my way through algebra. But when you're a medical reporter, if you want to be good at it, you really need to understand statistics and numbers. And my editor that hired me for the role in New York really put me through a boot camp of doing that. So, it was always a source of pride when I got to correct a scientist or researcher on their math. And I really liked doing that. And then I spent the better part of a decade doing that. I would say like 5.5, 6 years. And then it was just time for a change. I wanted to move up on the team, but there really wasn't a position in the editor role on the team to do that. And it's just one of those things, like if there's not a position, there's not a position. So it's not, possible. So I started looking around, and an acquaintance of mine was running sort of social media for Reuters. And I reached out to her and she basically said, "Oh, we are going to have an opening on the team." So I applied and I became digital editor. And a lot of it was doing some video stuff, but mostly working on social media. And it was nice because it sort of gave me an entryway back into breaking news and general news. And I really thrived on the breaking news aspect of it. And I did that for, I think, a little over a year. And my friend had been working at LinkedIn. And he said that there was a position open doing sort of daily news work. And what struck me about LinkedIn was that whenever I dealt with them, they were very human. When I worked with other social media companies via Reuters, so like if we reached out to another social media company, it was mostly I was dealing with business development. But when I reached out to LinkedIn, I was dealing with other journalists. And that really intrigued me. So I applied and I was happy at Reuters. But, it was one of those things where Thomson Reuters had been partially sold to a private investment group, or not a private investment group, but it was, I think, Blackstone. So there were changes at Reuters, and I just thought, it can't hurt to apply. And I got the job offer, and I knew Reuters probably couldn't compete with it, but I still gave them an opportunity. And, I miss the people at Reuters dearly, but I'm also eternally grateful that I went to LinkedIn.
It sounds as though, these opportunities present themselves in a way for you. And so you must attract opportunities by having a very open mindset, yes. And also having a network that can say, hey, have you thought of this? Or, oh, have you heard of that? It does prove that your network is really a very big part of your career journey and job search, isn't it? Because so often you wouldn't even have, if you weren't really looking, you wouldn't have known, and therefore you wouldn't apply. But if someone plants a seed and says, hey, this is what it's like, and why don't you meet some people here and see if you like it? That's what really makes a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think networking is really the key, and that's why in a lot of what I do at LinkedIn, I always say networking is the foundation of a successful career. And I think the caveat to that is that smart networking is the key to a successful career, because I think being selective of the people that you follow and that influence you is important. So my first editor at Reuters as a medical reporter, like I said, he put me through a boot camp to understand statistics. And there were a lot of times where I was looking other places and they were interviewing me, and there were so many conversations where they said, oh, well, we know you're okay because you were trained by this person. And, I think I'm fortunate that they've come into my life at various times. But when I look back, it's very much about not necessarily just networking with everyone, but it's being selective with who you actually allow to influence you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also I think it's who you're in the sphere of influence of as well. Because if it's someone who really does have a good reputation and they end up being your mentor or guide, and then it's you know that those values would be in alignment as well, and therefore you tend to trust that other person a little more easily as well. So just being in the presence of certain people and knowing that, oh, if he gets along with them, if you're a friend of mine, then we know that there's already that little bit of a connection, which really helps. And the whole LinkedIn premise is to do with connection, isn't it? And you've had a
very much
career at LinkedIn, and you've progressed through, and now you focus on job search and careers. So obviously this is something that's very close to your heart as well, because you understand, the power of connection. And so tell me, what is it like working at LinkedIn?
It's really good. When I first joined, I think any journalist that joins a tech company may be apprehensive about it, because technology companies do not have a good reputation when it comes to their encounters with journalism. And I think Australia knows that very well, obviously. But I sort of made a promise to myself that if ethics were ever an issue for me, I would leave. And honestly, it's never been an issue. The foundation that they set for the editorial team, and I guess just for scene setting, if people don't know, is that LinkedIn has its own editorial team that is made up of 200 some journalists and editors around the world. And they kind of leave us to our own devices. And I think, it's really a wonderful match, because LinkedIn, our mission is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. Obviously, I've heard that once or twice because I remember it. And I think that's also the mission of journalism. It's to give people the ability to govern their own lives with accurate information. So it's really an incredible match. And then the way they've set it up internally is really fantastic. And also the respect I think people have internally for our team. is very nice. They know that we're there to serve our members and give them accurate information about what the world is really like. So we're not paid to promote LinkedIn. We're not paid to do anything like that. We're there to give them accurate information and hopefully give them autonomy in their professional life. So it's really an honor, especially when you look at the landscape of media these days, to be able to sort of go in every day and say, okay, what can I do that is going to benefit the people on the other side of this?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that LinkedIn is the one digital platform that I enjoy using the most because it seems to be the most honest and most helpful. A lot of the other digital platforms, they're really for fun and cat photos or whatever, which I love cat photos.
Cat photos are great.
We're both cat people, so yes. We're on the same page there. But certainly on LinkedIn, it started out as a professional networking job search site, and now B2B marketing is very strong on it as well. But the connections that people make, it feels so real and so authentic. And even though, that there have been some issues with some fake profiles, but I know LinkedIn is working very hard to get rid of them, which is wonderful. You know what was interesting? One day I woke up and I saw that I had 2,000 fewer followers than I had the day before. And I thought, hooray, because that means these must be just random followers, not connections, just people who follow. And they must be fake profiles that you're really spending a lot of time getting rid of. So that's wonderful. But, there will always be spam and people who abuse the system. But I find that LinkedIn has got the most integrity, in my opinion. I think because it's for professionals and it's for people supporting people to build their business, to build their careers as well. And do you feel that sort of emanates through the business?
Definitely. And I know our trust team works very hard. And similarly, the one day I woke up and I think my followers had fallen by like 2,000 or 3,000. And, I looked it up and again, like LinkedIn is so big, so things sometimes happen and you're sort of saying like, oh, what was that? And then I found out that, they were cleaning up a lot of profiles that may be dormant or suspicious or things like that. And we do put a big priority on sort of trust. And I know one thing that we always look at every year is sort of like the most trusted digital platforms out there. I think Insider puts out a report, and it's always nice to see us very close or at the top each time because, what's nice is, LinkedIn profiles, they're a person. It's not, they're not avatars or anything like that. So if, someone reaches out to me, I can sort of look and see who they are. I could see if they're struggling with something or if they're in an industry that might be negatively affected by a downturn or something like that. And that there's a human on the other side of it. So I think all of that is working in our favor.
Oh, definitely. And, since you are the senior managing editor of LinkedIn and Get Hired podcast, which I love, and the Get Hired newsletter, which provides so much fantastic information. When it comes to building a profile, most people who are on LinkedIn, they know, and LinkedIn has those excellent prompts as to which sections you need to add in order to be an all-star profile. But what about content creation? Can I ask you a few questions on that on LinkedIn? Because
of course.
I'm sure the listeners would really love to know, because in order to build your brand and to become known in your niche, in your area of specialization, these are for individuals who may be career professionals and perhaps will be looking to progress in their careers or look for another job. I mean, mainly because I'm a career coach, and people will be those who perhaps are in transition or wanting to secure a promotion. I always advocate that you need to become a content creator, because that's how you build your profile and how you become known in your area of expertise. So when it comes to content creation on LinkedIn, what do you think, or what would you recommend would be the best practice for someone who's just starting out?
Honestly, it's just looking for ways to add value. So it doesn't mean you have to write articles. It doesn't mean that you have to post videos. It doesn't have to be any of that. It could be that if you read something that resonates with you and you have something to add to it of substance, post it and maybe tag other people that you work with and ask their opinions. And this doesn't just apply to people who are working in an office. You know, one of the things that I sometimes mention is that we have a large retail community on LinkedIn. So, you know, we in the United States, we have this thing called Black Friday. Mm-hmm. And after our Thanksgiving holiday, the next morning, people line up at stores and they go shopping. You know, as soon as 7 a.m. hits, they rush into stores. And undoubtedly, there's always, a TV that might be discounted quite nicely and people get physical over it. And, so like if something like that happens and you work in customer service, maybe your store has a procedure to prevent that from happening. Even that could be a value add to say, oh, in our store, we only let a certain number of customers in at a time at the start of these busy seasons. It could be that if you're in medicine, if you're a nurse, you could talk about maybe a new regulation. Medical students in the United States, there are strict rules around how often and how long they can work. And those shift over time. So if there's a new regulation about that, you could post about that. So it doesn't just have to be people who are sitting in an office, with a humanities degree or something like that. It really applies to everyone. And I think the main thing is just taking it a step further than just posting the article. Just add your thoughts to it. And then just inviting other people to comment. And what you'll find over time is that people will find you. So they'll say, oh, this person's reading and writing about this, and they'll take you seriously. So if you're applying for maybe a store manager role, if you're working in retail, they'll say, oh, wow, this person has really good ideas. They have great instincts. It's almost like interviewing before you interview, and you can make them fall in love with you, and you can make them sort of respect your thoughts and contemplation. So I would say just go for it and add value to the conversation.
Yeah. A lot of people feel a little bit shy or reluctant to share their thoughts online because they think, oh, who am I to share that thought? Or why would anyone listen to me? And so what they do is they just share other people's content, which is lovely and it has its value too. But I always love it when someone adds their own opinion because opinions matter. And, whatever opinion you have, it's your opinion. There's no right or wrong. It's your opinion. And why not express it as long as it's not going to harm anybody else? And always be respectful is really important. But sometimes I always think it's good to plant your flag in the sand so people know what you stand for as well, because that makes you stand out from the crowd and you're no longer this bland sort of gray. You're suddenly someone who really feels strongly about something. And that, I think, always makes you more desirable too. What about, on LinkedIn over the past year, the mind boggles. It is so hard to keep up with all the amazing new features that keep getting released all the time. And most of the time I find them simply by random. And it's like, okay, this is new, or, oh, they've moved this.
Yeah.
But there've been, I think, the past year, over 100 new features. Which ones are your favorite features for job seekers, Andrew?
I think there's been some really great changes with what you can feature on your profile, and how your profile looks. So I always recommend to people to really experiment with how their profile is looking and find what works for you. So if you are a visual person and you have visual products, to feature those. If you have a newsletter, you could feature those now. So they're the little box that is on your profile where you can sort of not necessarily post, but you can highlight things that you've done. They're always increasing the number of items that you can add to that. So I think that is really nice because you can highlight, your newsletter, you could highlight PDFs, things like that. So it's been in existence for a while, but they're really sort of broadening what you can actually put in there. I would say we're doing a lot of work around trust, so verification of identity. I think there's been some announcements about that I've really liked. So, if you go to my profile, I think you can see like I'm verified through all these different systems. And it was actually just as simple as sort of like, verifying my picture and things like that, which was really nice. And then the other thing I would say is that what LinkedIn is really good about too is that, we really embrace the idea of what works right now. So sometimes features disappear, sometimes they'll come back in a different format. So, I think those things that we actually sometimes remove are actually a good sign of health of the platform, is that we're not just going to keep something around because it was built. We want to make sure it's actually useful to the members. So I would say that those are some of the highlights that I like, and especially over the past year that we've dedicated ourselves to. But when it comes to the profile itself, I would say like the feature format, you can add links to your bar now. So sort of where it says your name, you could say, subscribe to my newsletter or something like that. There's a lot of great premium features out there where you get matched to specific jobs. So there's really a lot. And a lot of times it's not until I go to our quarterly meetings for the different product arms that I really sit back and go, wow, that's really cool. I didn't even know we were doing that.
Yeah, honestly, it just gets better and better and better. And I love the verification tools because that's so important. And my favorite, I have two favorite features. One is the voice pronunciation feature, and the other one is actually a feature that's gone, but people who created it before it disappeared still have it. And that was the profile video feature, because I thought 30 seconds of someone actually presenting was quite good for job seekers, but it's gone. Maybe it'll come back in a different format. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah, no, definitely. But I'm with you on the pronunciation feature, especially as a fellow podcaster. I very much appreciate it. And also it's really nice if someone is coming on your show or you're talking to them, that you can pronounce their name correctly. So, I love that feature actually.
Yeah, it's very respectful, I think, and helpful for job seekers who are going to go and meet someone in an interview. There's nothing worse than pronouncing someone's name incorrectly. So that really helps. And so, Andrew, I could speak with you all day because, there's so much I'd love to get from you. However, tell me, what next for Andrew Seaman? Where do you hope your career to go over the next few years?
Honestly, so I actually have been having a lot of discussions about this lately, about sort of not necessarily focusing on your destination, but enjoying the journey of where you're going. So I have actually been focusing a lot on just enjoying where I am, because it's one of those things where it's hard to imagine a better position for me. I really love what I do. I work with really amazing people. I have a great manager. I have a great team to support me. And sort of what I'm focused on is helping others navigate LinkedIn internally and also build their profiles, because I feel like I have done an okay job navigating sort of the complexities of LinkedIn, because we are sort of a weird team where we're journalists thrown into a tech company with engineers, and it's an incredibly welcoming environment, but it also does take some tact to figure out, okay, this is the hierarchy, these are the jargon that you need to use. So I really like being able to give people advice and say, okay, if this is the project you want to pursue, this is how you're going to get it off the ground, or this is the route I would take. And also just being a better manager. Like I always tell people, I don't want to screw up their careers. So it's one thing to give career advice, but then when you're someone's manager, it really brings it home. So I try and take that seriously and make sure that I'm, training and I'm coaching them properly and I'm being honest with them. So I think that's what's next for me, is continuing to hone my management skills, to help mentor people internally, and just try and figure out like what we could do next. I think that's one of the best things about working in a tech company, is that you're doing what works right now, but that might not be true in a year. So you have to keep evolving. You have to keep figuring out the best way to serve our members. So yeah, I think, I'm happy where I am. I plan to enjoy it. And it's mostly just sort of getting better at what I'm doing.
Yeah, it sounds like you work with such a beautiful blend of analytical and scientific minds, as well as creative minds and business-minded professionals as well. So it all comes together really perfectly. And isn't it wonderful when you work in an environment where you just love the people that you work with and the work that you're doing? That absolutely is the ideal. It's a bit like finding your ikigai. Yes. So
yes,
I'm so happy for you, and I feel really blessed to have actually met you twice now.
Yes,
which is lovely. And I hope to descend on you in New York City one day in the future, if I come and visit. But thank you for sharing your story, because that was really interesting for anyone thinking of embarking on a journalism career. You never know where it's going to take you, and always, to be open and maintain your network and connections, and just continually keep learning. I've learned a lot from you just today as well. So thank you so much, Andrew. Do you want to leave us with any final thoughts?
Well, I've been following you for quite a long time. And, hopefully we'll get to chat again, and hopefully maybe someday I'll come to Australia, because we have an amazing editorial team there. But, the thing I always tell people about the world of work is, when I started covering this area, I realized that the job search and career person from LinkedIn could often come off as ingenuine, or I call it the grim reaper of happy work. So it's sort of like the person who's just there to tell you to do a good job and put your heart and soul into it. And I didn't want to be that. So what I always came up with, are sort of two mantras. And what that is that you shouldn't be miserable at work, and you should also be able to dictate the relationship you have with work. And hopefully people can use those two true norths, as I call them, to sort of say, okay, yeah, I don't want to be obsessed with my job. And that's okay. There are people who are fully embraced by their job and are fully committed to it. But then there are other people who just want a 9-to-5 job. But regardless of what your relationship is with work, you shouldn't go in and be miserable every day. And if you are, maybe it's time to look for something else. And a career is long and windy. So, you're never stuck in one place. So I would say, listen to people like Jane, listen to people who know what they're talking about. And, when you're ready to make the move, you'll know.
Mm-hmm. And I think every experience you have in your career, it's part of the rich tapestry of our lives, isn't it? And we learn so much from it. And then if we take the good from each step, even if it has been challenging, then you know that you'll be more valuable as a leader in your next role too. And how lucky is LinkedIn to have you, Andrew? Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed our chat, and I hope that we get to have another chat again. And I might actually try and extract more LinkedIn information from you too.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Jane.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for joining me today. For affordable career help, please check out my Career Success Program. I provide a unique blend of online and live career coaching to help you take control of every aspect of your career or career change. If you aren't where you want to be in your career, let's talk. Check it out at thecareersacademy.online. The links are in my show notes.